Welcome to Shut Up and Sit. I'm Yedda a consciousness coach and consultant. I'm on a mission to bring mindfulness to the modern world. Each week, we will offer ancient healing practices, real-world examples, and the latest research in neurobiology and behavior change into fun conversation that invites you to wake up your highest self. Now, let's go shut up and sit. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Again, as always, it's Yedda, and I am so excited to be here with you, talking about some really great stuff today, kind of carrying that momentum through. We're still in chapter 5. We're really kind of now getting into the willpower, the energy, the shifting, all these cool things that are starting to change inside of us when we start changing belief systems. On our last episode, I talked to you about the 3 barriers that prevent us from being in the present moment. Hope those really helped you and you're able to pull on some of those since our last episode so you can really get radically present in this moment. And if you remember from that show I talked about, because the moment, actually the client that I believe we're always serving is the moment. Not my ego, not your ego, not everybody else's wants and demands. We are all here to serve the moment, the present moment. And when we do that, totally cool, amazing, life-changing things happen. And today we are leading into the energetic shifts that you actually go through when you change a belief. And if you didn't know, there are 10, and they are energetic shifts. Like, it's for real. I'm talking like real energy, like radically life-changing, like quantum physics, subatomic particle stuff. Like, reality shifts when you shift. And you've probably seen that really cool bumper sticker or t-shirt, shift happens. Shift does happen. And when you show up with a different thought, you actually energetically, remember, thoughts are mental units of activity. You actually energetically alter the emotion, right? The energy and motion in you, which then it does change the energy and the motion of the behavior you're participating in. And guess what? That energy impacts the world. It impacts people right here in front of us within a certain distance. And here's what's really freaking cool. I mean, really cool, you guys. There's been research, and this is real legit. You can Google it, check it out. There's been research where they have taken an atom, okay, and they have split this atom, and they left a particle of the atom here in the United States. And they took the other particle of the atom over into Europe. Okay, so these 2 parts of a molecule, right, subatomic particles, and atoms, we all know what atoms are. If you don't, that's a whole nother thing, and I'm not the person to teach you that, so you got to Google that one too. But they took these 2, what was one, these 2 parts of this one particle, and they had it separated by an ocean. And they did research, and what they did to the one particle here in the United States, the other particle across the ocean responded with the same exact response as the one in the laboratory here. So you figure that one out, but I will tell you there are some unseen, amazing, energetic principles happening in the universe, in us, and in our world. It's all connected. We're all connected. So when I started reading that and I started really getting into understanding how energy works and that it's all energy, I got really curious and I thought, okay, so if a belief is just a thought that I keep thinking to the point that I don't even realize I'm thinking it anymore, and that thought has energy, and I decide to bring that up into conscious awareness with my mindfulness practice by shutting up and sitting and going within and self-inquiry and curiosity and silence and all this cool stuff we're talking about. Well, what shift does that have if I decide to change that thought, aka that belief system, in my silent, still practice of sitting, and then not only change the energy in me, but then when I go out into the world, change the energy of how I show up, which has a ripple effect, which affects everybody else. And that's where I started going, there's some really cool stuff here on a really cool energetic level. So turns out there's an entire field of study and course and body of work. So I did a lot of work with evolving wisdom. Gene Houston is one of the top leaders in this field. And if you don't know who Gene Houston is, if you've got the book, I've got a massive section of resources in the back that I pull from all the saints and sages and teachers and websites and resources. They're all there. And so Jean Houston actually she knew Einstein as a little girl. She's known some incredible philosophers around the world. Her work is world renowned. And she also mentored John Lennon and some incredible human beings on our planet. And so she has this really great course. And so I took this course, did all these certifications with Evolving Wisdom to really understand what she calls our quantum blueprint. So just hang on, buckle up for a minute if you're like, what is Yedda talking about today? There's a quantum blueprint. There is an energy that is unseen and unknown to most of us about who we are and how we show up. And so she does this deep dive to go into really identifying what your quantum blueprint is, really stepping fully into the full potentiality of who we all are. And I've talked about that all throughout the book. I've talked about that some throughout the shows and the lessons here. Radiant light. I mean, we've heard about this in many different religions, in many different philosophies, teachings. People would say that we are light. Light is what we are. And so here's what's really interesting. If you want to know what's it like to be the light, you have to experience contrast in order to know that which you already are. So darkness, suffering, shadow, all these words that come up in this work actually help us to remember and draw us back to the truth of that we are really all the light. And so what I thought was really interesting, and in the beginning of my work, I said this in an earlier episode way back in the beginning of the show, and in these lessons, I thought, what's it like to be the light? When I would be in yoga and everyone's like, oh, namaste, what does that mean? And of course, if you don't know, and I told you this, but to remind you, it means the light in me honors and sees the light in you. But I would look at people and I'm like, I don't see the light. I don't see anything. I just see people. I just see individuals. I mean, I don't see any light. And so I don't know about you. Maybe when you look at people, you see light. I didn't see any light. And so as I started questioning that, what I realized was in my teachings and my self-discovery was the light is this energetic shift, this process, and it's not always visible with the naked eye. And yes, you do sometimes see when people do this work, they reach a level of joy and they walk in the room and they lighten the room up. Their vibrancy, their energy is something that you can sense or feel. And sometimes, I think sometimes you can see, for me, I can see people's radiance. And it's a different kind of radiance than the selfie in the bathroom mirror with your Gucci bag and everybody checking out your silhouette and how great you are after doing your CrossFit class. I'm not talking about that kind of light or radiant that we put on social media. I'm talking about that radiant light that sometimes you just see pure joy, not ego joy, but real, true presence and joy because it lives in this moment. And so when we're in that, and when I was in this question, I thought, well, I want to go deeper into this. So there are these 10 steps, and I want to tell you what these 10 steps are because they're a little bit deep, they're a little bit heady, so heads up, we're going to go into some big words here, but that's because this comes from quantum physics. And so when we go through these 10, I'll then give you a story to kind of help you see how this all plays out. Because when you change a belief, when you wake up and say, great, Yedda, now I've been listening, I want to shut up and sit, I want to go within and I want to bring my best and highest self out into the world and it's going to be great. Well, it is, but it's not because you got to go through some shit in order to get to the light. That's the way energy works. So here's what I mean by that. So when we go into these 10 energetic shifts, know that energy always goes through these 10. It never, ever gets to 1 and stays there forever. Energy cannot stay stagnant. It doesn't work that way. You're always going through all 10. In your own thoughts, in your own life, in your own business, in your own relationships, in your own world. And so the crazy thing is, what we try to do is we try to stop the energy. We think we are going to be able to control it and hold it right here, right now, and make it be this way forever. And the truth is, you can't. I mean, it's like grasping air and holding on to it. You can't hold the energy and force it to stay this way forever. That's your ego that wants you to say, don't change, don't grow, don't evolve, don't go anywhere, don't do anything. Right now, this is great, and we never, ever want it to change. It's not possible. And here's why, because energy goes through these 10 steps. Step number 1, energy goes through what's called centration. All right. You're like, man, Yedda, you said you were going heady on me. God, I didn't know we were going right out of the gate. So centration, and I'm reading right out of the book. So if you're following along in your book, you've got it in front of you. If you're on the course, you've got that as well in a PDF and or then in the hard copy. If you're just on the show listening and you want to make your own notes, go for it. But you definitely want to get the book if you're still hanging with us after all these episodes. So number 1, centration. Practice centering activities in your life so you become grounded as the center of your reality and change your belief building process, building the belief to operate from your center. So centration, that's my definition that's in the book, literally means to be centered. So what happens when we first wake up and we do this work is, that's what shutting up and sitting is. We got to get centered and we go, whoa, wait a minute, I got to stop. And I really want to get centered on, where am I? Where do I want to go? What do I want to do? And so when we get into that centering space, it's really cool. And we're like, oh, this feels so good. I feel so grounded. I feel so centered. I know where I'm at. I know where I want to go. But you can't stay there because energy does like to come back to its center. But once it gets into a place of centration, the next step comes in, which is called allurement. And I'm going to read right out of the book on this one, on each one of these, because they're big definitions. So I'm going to give that to you, but I'm going to share along the way. But allurement comes in next. Once centered in your reality, you can begin to attract the things that you already are, or attract yourself to new things or different vibrations and frequencies that you need to grow and evolve. Okay. So once you get centered and you know where you want to go, you can then go, okay, now I'm going to actually draw and call things. It's basically like the law of attraction. I'm going to draw and call things to me. Consciously and unconsciously, energy is drawn to that which it is like. Okay. And so what happens is now you're in this state of curiosity because you go, well, is this where I want to be? Yeah, this feels really good. Well, is this where I don't want to be? No, I think I want to be somewhere different. So once you get centered, you start to realize the allurement is actually happening, whether it's positive or negative, good or bad, up or down. Remember, contrast is just there to show us that which we are or are not. And so when we get into the second stage of energy, we go, whoa, wait a minute. So some people will get centered because some life tragedy or some experience has happened, and then they sit down and they figure out where they are, where they want to go. Then the allurement part of the energy starts to show them, this is what's coming towards you. This is what's repelling from you. Is it working for you? Is it serving? Well, then the third wave, the third place of energy and the flow of energy comes in. And this is called emergence. So emergence kicks in. And what emergence is latent thoughts and ideas within you that are required for you to emerge and expand into a larger self, a larger universe. So when you start to make your conscious and unconscious world known and you shut up and sit, you get centered and things start coming to you or not coming to you, you go into a deeper place of emergence and you start to say, what would I like? Is this where I want to be? What's wanting to emerge and grow and expand up out of me? And when you're in that place, this is a really powerful place because that's when those limiting beliefs and those old narratives kick in and go, oh, I can't do that. I can't have that job. I can't do that for a living, or I could never be in that place. And so all of these thoughts and things, you get centered, you start to realize what's coming to you, the allurement, the attraction, the emergence. These are your hopes and dreams and desires. They've been latent for a really long time for some of us, for some of my clients, for me even, it was half my life. They've just been pushed down, pushed away. Well, when we shut up and sit, they start to kind of bubble back up. Who would I be if I showed up and I was joyful? Who would I be if I was kind and loving? Who would I be if I could do what I love to do for a living as opposed to this job that keeps me, which I think the definition of a job is, J-O-B, is just over broke. When people tell me, yeah, I got a job. And I'm like, yeah, just over broke is the life we live when we have a job. But when you have a passion or a purpose or a living that brings you alive, that's that emergence that starts to come up. And so most people get to this place and then they start to push it all back down. And they don't want the energy to go anywhere. They aren't interested in this shift anymore. But everything, hopes and dreams and these rockets of desires are coming all day long in your own thoughts, in your own ideas, which leads us into the next level that energy gets to. So once it gets centered, it starts to allure and attract, and then it starts to emerge. It starts to move into a little bit of homeostasis because energy likes to be organized. And this is what I have in the book. That homeostasis is the process of organizing and maintaining the new achievements and values you have acquired with your new behaviors and beliefs, resulting in a new level of consciousness. So this is important. You have to let it emerge long enough to then let some of it organize and show up in a new way. A lot of clients I know get to emergence and they're like, holy shit, and they see something or they start to get a glimpse of what they could be and they turn tail and they run the other way, and they never get to the point where the homeostasis and the organization of the energy gets to hang out long enough and say, whoa, what would it look like if we were this person? We've got to level up. We've got to level the energy up. And it takes a little while. Homeostasis is something where we know this word from our own biology, but energy itself is in a place and loves to be in a place of homeostasis. It likes to organize. It likes to work together. And here's this. I just love this stuff when you start thinking about this. So it says in the book, most people are at least asking some of the right questions from the very beginning, but it can be all too easy to build a norm around the asking and forget to pursue the answering. So I know in mindfulness, we talk about living in the question, but you don't want to be in let's change the asking and the answering into problem and solution. So if all you're doing is focusing the homeostasis on the problem, this is the problem, this is the problem, this is the problem, you don't let the energy show you a different level that it can operate at to get to the solution, which is another level. And, Einstein says this, and I've got some of his stuff in my book, but, no problem can be solved at the level of consciousness that it was created at. It just doesn't work that way. It's because it's all energy. So when you're in this fourth level and things are kind of, they're when I say homeostasis, it doesn't mean that it's always good. You might have a norm around a limiting belief or around a question or around a problem in life that you've not allowed the energy to take you to the next level. And here's why you haven't. Because level number 5 is cataclysm. And nobody wants that. Nobody, I can tell you, we fight it, we avoid it, we have aversion around it, we run from it, we cling. On the last episode or two back, I talked about, what happens when we go into our fight or flight, right? All the F words start coming up. And so what happens is we don't want to go into the cataclysm. Who wants to go into the eye of the hurricane? But here's what happens. If you read in this part of the book, and it's a little bit longer, but the breakdown of the energy and the habits necessary to lead to a breakthrough have to have a cataclysm. So if you tell me, woohoo, I'm going to do this great new thing and it's going to be awesome, and you're going up like this, I will tell my clients, guess what? You have to go down like this. There has to be a breakdown to get to the breakthrough. So normally around number 3, emergence, most people, they quit, they give up. Some people hang out and they try to get into a new habit, a new norm. The first time shit goes wrong and they have a full-blown breakdown, they completely and totally quit, give up, and they turn all the way back and they just want to go all the way back to the centration. They're like, I just want to go back and just sit here in this little safe space and I never ever want to leave. And I know that feels like the right thing to do, but the truth is if you're breaking free from limiting beliefs that are holding you back, you have to learn to sit with the mess. That's what mindfulness is all about, is sitting with the messiness, the suffering, the struggling, the ugly moments in your own head and in somebody else's head. It's part of the process. So you have to break down the energy or habits to change them. And so, and I want to read this because sometimes when I get to teaching you guys, I get a little off my own script here, but I want to read this because this is important. And so those of us who didn't get a PhD in loving kindness and compassion, AKA all of us, end up with some type of cataclysm in our habits and health, in our family, with our friends, our relationships, careers, finances, just like I said. And this is where we arrive at the seat of suffering. And most people, like I said, turn, they run away from it, they fight it. But where mindfulness shows up is it helps us to sit in that silence, in that suffering. I mean, it's a crucial habit in order to cultivate the ability to go through change. You've got to be able to sit with it. And if you're able, just for a minute or two, to sit with it and let it go, sit with it and let it go, what you'll find is that light that I started with, the suffering, the cataclysm, it's a necessary part of it. But if you're not willing to face it, you will not reach the full light at the end of the tunnel. And that's what it means, those metaphors of you're going through the tunnel, keep going, there's light at the end of the tunnel. These 10 steps, 5 is slam in the middle. And I can tell you, 87% of the world says, screw this, Yedda, I'm out, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore, I'm just going to go back to the habit I had. Can't be any worse to live like this than to face the shit that started coming up in my own mind, in my own life. And what I will tell you is that might feel like that's true. But I will tell you one time that you're able to sit with the cataclysm and make it through, you look back and you go, I did that. I think I could do it again. And so I want to encourage you. This is just an energetic process. Everybody goes through this when they change stuff. If you see people that are on social media or on the front of the room and they're like, oh, life is great and everything I do for my clients is great and there's no suffering, and that's total crap. You have to sit with the messiness. You've got to cultivate the ability to go, this is hard. This is challenging me. This is suffering. But you don't run from it. You don't get into it. Remember a couple episodes back, we talked about what are the 4 things people do when they get into this place of avoidance. Some people actually get addicted to personal growth and self-discovery. But you know why they do? Because that keeps them at level 4. It prevents them from going further into letting it all break. And I talked about this too, about post-traumatic stress disorder, and actually this ability, it's not about resilience. Resilience is what most people are doing, and resilience is they're resisting getting into the cataclysm and letting shit break. They are braced. They are like, I'm not going any further. Let it all break. Let the cataclysm strip and tear away all the shit that's holding you back. And I promise you, the freedom you find when you can sit in the middle of your suffering is you find out it's all an illusion anyway. It was just all in your mind. It was all thoughts. And so if you can sit with 5, if you can sit with cataclysm, guess what's just on the other side of cataclysm? Synergy. And that's our 6th step that all energy goes through. All energy then moves into synergy. And I got to read this too, because these are really big definitions. So synergy is mutually enhancing relationships that are created and are necessary during the breakdown. So what that means is the universe will provide the people you need to protect and guide you once you get through the cataclysm. So take, for example, and I love this story and I put this in here for a reason. Emperor penguins, and I love penguins. I think they're super cute. But if you didn't know this, emperor penguins live in the coldest part of the world. And when the emperor penguin lays eggs, the entire colony stands in a concentric circle around the eggs to keep them warm. And this is what's really cool. So on every inner circle, the penguins face the eggs. Okay, so you have the eggs and all the penguins are facing, and they got ring and ring and ring, thousands of penguins all facing the circle. And guess what? On the very far outer circle, that last ring of circle, the penguins face outwards. And why do they do that? Because they're bracing the cold air that's coming into the group, and they are facing it in order to protect the whole group of penguins. And after a certain amount of time, guess what happens? The outer ring of penguins, all right? So if the outer ring is facing out and the second ring is behind them is facing in, that second ring takes a step out and turns and faces the cold air. The outer ring goes all the way to the center to protect the eggs in the very center and is kept warm by the ring of penguins. It's really interesting because this, when you're, what does that have to do with synergy? We are all connected. We're all working together. Animals do this. Every part of nature does this. There is an intelligence, and I talk about this a lot on the show and a lot in these lessons. There's an intelligence in the universe that is operating, that doesn't need or require us to dictate the show. How do penguins know that the outer ring goes to the middle? And then the middle, how it all works to get, because they've got this synergistic energy. It's energy that's telling them to do this and to work through this. We have the same as human beings. We just have higher thought process because of our brain. So synergy is what comes after the cataclysm. Think about any traumatic event, it could be big or small in your life. Were you ever left completely and totally alone, or did somebody show up just at the right time, at the right place, in the right awareness? They do, because they're drawn to the energy. They know cataclysm has just occurred, and they know you need help on an energetic level because you're now rebuilding. Just like that outer layer of the penguins, the energy knows this layer needs to come back close into the fold and needs to be protected by the rest. And they've researched this for years. They watch these emperor penguins. It's fascinating. And then not to mention they're super cute too. But this is what happens to us as human beings. We do get the help. when we are aware and we look around and we talk and we see people show up. So it might be someone gives you the right copy of a book at exactly the right time. It might be somebody calls and asks you to go out to lunch at just the right moment when you're just at your very bottom. It just signs and signals from the universe are happening because energy is always evolving and always connecting and always communicating. So synergy comes right after the cataclysm. Most of us, though, say, no, I don't believe that. And once you go through it once and you see that, you do believe it. And you go, oh, wow, I've got help here. I've got support. And then once you're in the synergy state of the energy shift, you then move in to the 7th energy shift, which is transmutation. And I love transmutation. This requires deep interchange, but it also leads to true growth and evolving. And when we talk about transmutation, I'm not talking transformation. Okay, that's not remember the Transformers where the car turns into the robot and fights no. That's just taking something and then just shifting it into something else. Transmutation, literally of energy, allows you to completely surrender to, let go of the thoughts, and they no longer exist and have control and power over you because you have transmuted them into a way where you've now created at an energetic level a new sponsoring thought. And that new sponsoring thought creates different thought. So when we transmutate something on an energetic level, we go all the way to the core and we change its very essence from its very beginnings. That's what transmutation is on an energetic level. So if all energy goes through that, your thoughts go through that too, because they're just mental units of energy. You can completely transmute habits, beliefs, and thought processes, but only if you're willing to go through those first 6 layers. You don't get to transmutation if you can't go through the first 6. And then once you get into this whole transmutation space and you completely, radically let go of everything that no longer serves you, what happens is then 8, the next level, is transformation. And some people go, well, wait a minute, why wouldn't transformation come first? Because you've got to go, energy has to go all the way back to its core, complete breakdown, rebuild with synergy. It's totally transmuted at this point, which then allows it to show up and create and transform into something totally new as it starts to be like back into the experience that it's in. So transformation, and this is change that's recognized on an individual level, and it says in the book that leads to change on your level of consciousness and on a universal level. You begin to transform your entire reality. Your whole outer world starts to look different. So what transforms is the transmutation on the inside, then begins to transform and change what's happening on the outside. And I've said this a lot, but the truth is your outer world is a direct reflection of your inner world. Whenever I meet new clients or meet people or just listen to people or watch people, their outer world will show you what's going on in their inner world. And when you do this work in the inner work of this energy shifting, what happens is everything naturally has to change on the outside because all energy on the inside has shifted. You make different decisions, you have different thoughts, you choose different places to go, you engage with people in different ways, and all of a sudden you've created a radically different life simply because you went with the energy all the way down to the transmutation of the very, very core of this sponsoring, whether you call it molecule of energy, original thought, whatever it is. When you let yourself fall, and in mindfulness, the sitting with the suffering, it feels like you're falling when you just fall deeper and deeper and deeper into the unknown. Some people call it the darkness, the dark night of the soul, the abyss. I promise you, what feels like falling energetically is actually rising. And it's such an oxymoron. It's such a paradox. And when you get into a lot of mindfulness, there is a lot of parodies. There's a lot of paradox. But that's because mindfulness says, I can sit exactly right here in this moment with what is. Remember, mindfulness is paying attention on purpose without judgment. I can let it all exist and I can be with it. And that's ultimately what I'm asking you to cultivate in this work of shut up and sit. And when you want to change patterns and behaviors and beliefs, you've got to let the energy shift. It's all energy. And if you've been fighting it and clinging it and resisting it and numbing it and shaming it and building armors around it and protecting it, you're not letting the energy do what it's supposed to do. and you've just been stifling and holding it all. And that's why we're stressed out, we're overwhelmed, we're unhappy, we're miserable. Energy is not flowing. It's all jammed up. Why do you think we say, oh, my back's killing me, my neck is hurting, I can't turn my head, and then my back and my legs? And yeah, because the energy is battling to try to get out of you, and you're battling to try to keep it in you. And that's what it means to go with the flow. So as we get into our last two energy shifts here, what I love about these last two is the ninth step, and it's called care, okay? But when we get into, and we've moved from transmutation into transformation, we literally start to take care of ourselves and others in a different way, because the energy wants and calls you to take care of it and to take care of you and everyone involved in it. Why is that? Because that energy knows that it is you and you are it, and it knows that it's supposed to be taken care of, and you know you're supposed to take care of it because it is you. And so, not to get kind of trippy dippy on you, but if you really start to think about something that's been birthed and brand new that comes into the world, little babies are a perfect metaphor here. We take care of them. And really, babies, if you went through this whole thing, all these steps, I mean, every energy, and you could do this with everything, you would find that metaphor of care, number 9, is when something is transformed and birthed literally out into the world, we take care of it. We take care of new babies. We take care of puppies. We take care of little creatures. We have an innate desire in us to take care of things, because the energy in its natural state is pure, present, loving awareness. And it wants and it draws us to want to take care of it. So in that 9th step, then we go, wow, I feel like I just want to do the right thing and the healthy thing to take care of me and to take care of other people and not be mean anymore and be kind and compassionate. And for me, when I got there, I was like, what is happening? I felt like the Grinch, that movie in The Grinch where his heart starts, and he's like, Maya, what's happening? And he goes, I'm feeling, and his heart starts growing bigger and bigger. That's what happens at level 9. You really, in an intimate level with the energy, want and do take care of yourself and others in a different way. Which leads us to number 10, which is radiance. That's the light right there. So this light is released from inside of you. It's entirely generated by your new belief that's penetrating all things at a deep inner level. You enter into resonance with the entire universe through this radiance. I mean, it happens. You don't control it. You don't force it, because the energy itself says, here I am. And it just radiates. And so on a physics level, when energy shifts, light is released, literally, and it's called radiance. So when this new belief system that you're creating is born inside of you and shifts through this energy, it radiates to a point that people see it, they can sense it. You've been working on, whatever it is. Maybe it's eating healthier or exercising or taking better care of yourself. And you walk in a room and people go, I don't know, there's just something different about her. She's just radiant right now. She radiates. She's just glowing. Why is that? Because the energy that has been shifting and working in this new belief system, it has a power all of its own. That's what we call the power of presence. There's presence leadership development, presence coaching, all kinds of things now in the world where people are like, we're going to cultivate our presence. But everything you're cultivating is these 10 steps of energy, because all matter, all energy goes through these 10 steps. And here's what's really cool. Because I've got it in here. It says, when we possess healthy beliefs, we radiate. And seriously, who doesn't want to radiate? We all do. We radiate. It's awesome. And you know what? This is why I say you don't go to the mountaintop and radiate and get to your place of enlightenment until we're all enlightened. Because what happens with the energy is, yes, it radiates. But once it radiates, and it's been radiating for a while, and it gets really centered in the radiating, guess what happens? It goes all the way back, and it's in center, right? It's in centration. It goes back into allurement. Now it's drawing wonderful, beautiful, loving things. It starts to emerge. Wow, if this is good, well, wouldn't this be even better? And shouldn't we do that? Which then goes back into homeostasis, which then breaks down the cataclysm, says, all right, we can go deeper. We can do more. Then the synergy kicks in, and then there's transmutation and transformation. Then we take even greater care, and the radiance comes back. It's ongoing. It never ends. So you don't get to radiance because we have, we could talk about this for hours and we're running out of time. 90% of all your belief systems are built and literally programmed inside of you by the age of 7. 90% of them. And I got news for you. You got lots of limiting beliefs. We all do, because we've been really literally raised in a world to tell us we're not enough. There's all different types of things out there that people are working on and battling on. I've worked through this process with many beliefs and many processes. I'm sure I have many more, but that's what happens with awareness. As it expands and you go through this process once, you realize I can go through it 10 times. I can go through it 20 times. All of life is going through this all the time. Nothing ever stays the same. So when you get to where you're like, oh, when I've arrived, it's going to look like and feel like this. And then guess what happens? Something somewhere else breaks down or something else emerges. And so mindfulness, this idea of shutting up and sitting, allows you to go through this process over and over and over and over again, because that's what life is learning to be with the moment and the energy. And it's always going through these 10 processes. So I promised I would give you a story before we wrap up, and I'll give you a quick one. But so I decided a few years ago that I would go to a 7-day silent retreat, and that in this retreat, I was going to just attack all those demons. And I'd already written the book. I already knew about all this. And I got to tell you, I wasn't prepared for the cataclysm that I was going to face in my own inner being. So when you start doing this work, you do it in waves, and you do it in experiences, and you do it at different depths. And so I go and pick this place out in the mountains in Colorado, and I pick it's a mindfulness-based stress reduction program that's done by Jon Kabat-Zinn. And as fate would have it, I wasn't supposed to be at this one. I was supposed to be doing, for my certification, another one with Jack Kornfield and Tara Brach, and I couldn't make it to that one. So I asked for special exception because I found this one, and I was like, ooh, this one looks really good. So I asked for special exception to go to the 7-day silent retreat, and I got there. And I didn't know much. I just knew Jon Kabat-Zinn was great, mindfulness-based stress reduction. Wow, that sounds awesome. And I get there in the middle of nowhere, no cell phone, no Wi-Fi, nothing. Van, picks us up at the airport, drives 2 hours in the middle of nowhere in Colorado, drops us off. And I have one room with a bathroom, and I'm with a group of 30 other people. And I walk in, and it's 7 days. And I walk in on a Friday, and I sit down, and there's 2 leaders, male and female. They start talking to us. There's literally, when I walk in, it's just a big, huge open room with little meditation cushions lined up. So I sit in the back to the left, because that's always my jam. That's where I sit. I need the closest to the exit. I got to be able to take it all in. I know my patterns. So I sit down, and this guy starts to come in, and he's walking towards me. And he looks like a brunette Brad Pitt. And I'm going, oh my God, please be single. Please be single. Please be single. Oh my God, this guy, the hottest guy in the world, is going to sit right next to me. And sure enough, he grabs his cushion, sits right next to me. And then I start going, oh, this is me so great. I'm going to have this really handsome guy to talk to all week. This is going to be awesome. Oh my gosh. I just thank you, God. This is the best week ever. And the leaders in the front tell us to turn to our partner, introduce ourselves to each other, because it will be the last time we talk to them or anyone else for 7 days. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? 7 days? I knew this was a silent retreat, but what? Nothing. No talking, no eye contact for 7 days. And I'm like, I went from this high to this low of sitting next to this incredible human being. I can't look at him. I can't talk to him. And I'm like, life is really not fair. Now, you're probably like, well, what does that have to do with the 10 stages of energy? Because I was so excited. I had this allurement, right? I'm all centered. I'm sitting, this allurement's happening, this emerge, and here comes this thing, this guy. All of a sudden, things start to get organized, and then complete and total cataclysm hits. And I'm like, what? I'm sitting here. We sat from 5 in the morning until 10 at night in complete and total silence. Now, we were able to, at some points, stand and walk in a circle in that room with no eye contact. We were able to sometimes walk outside. Again, no eye contact, no communication. But we were sitting in silence and stillness all day, every day. We got to eat as a group together, but it felt like we were in prison. We literally went into this beautiful room to eat vegan, vegetarian food, and I couldn't look at anybody. I couldn't make eye contact. Nothing. All of everything that I relied on inside of my own ego and mind to survive was taken from me. And I got to tell you, there was no getting out. When you made the commitment, I'm sure if I had an emergency and went to the head of the place, they probably could have figured out how to get me out of there. But I was there. And the other thing was, if I didn't finish this 7 days, I wasn't going to graduate with my 2-year program in mindfulness meditation teacher training. So I got to finish it. So what happens is cataclysm hits, and cataclysm hits hard. So I'm a couple of days in and I'm starting to have full-blown freak out, because I don't know about you, when was the last time you spent 7 days in your own head sitting next to a gorgeous human being and having no human connection or contact, or it's like, I mean, you could write a movie about this, and you're in your own head the entire time. So cataclysm hits and I start going deeper and deeper and deeper. And next thing I know, I feel like I'm in the upside down world in Stranger Things. And if you didn't watch that on Netflix, then you don't know what I'm talking about. But if there was an upside down world in Stranger Things, they do a phenomenal job of showing you the absolute dark, ugly side of everything in life. I was there. I was living there for days. I was in this upside down world where nothing made sense. And when I got done, I remember telling people, I feel like I fell through my own psyche. Literally, that's what it felt like. I dropped into a place of not knowing, not caring, not being able to communicate, constant dialogue with myself. That voice in my head, we had it out. And so here's what's really interesting in this whole place of cataclysm. The week starts going. I get through that dark, dark, dark place. And literally this energy, because I'm reminding myself, it doesn't stay this way forever, Yedda. It doesn't stay this way. Energy can't stay in the cataclysm forever. And as I get through it and get through the week, this energy starts to emerge. And I start sitting. And it doesn't matter who's sitting next to me. It doesn't matter what's at home waiting for me. It doesn't matter what I do for a living. It doesn't matter about the people in front of me. It doesn't matter about the voice inside, because the stillness and the dropping into that deep, deep, deep level and that care and all of the transmutation and transformation that was happening in the silence and in the sitting all started to come together. And so by the end of the week, we did get to talk on the very last day. And I couldn't, by that point, they gave us a microphone and said, does anybody want to share about their experience? And I didn't want to talk about any of it. I didn't feel the need to talk about anything, because I was able to contain my entire experience for 7 days all by myself. Now, I do have to tell on myself, because my son's going to listen to this show, and probably Jeff's going to listen to it too, and my meditation teacher. I did find an area of Wi-Fi by the kitchen that the employees actually had that nobody told us about, and I did send a few texts home because I was freaking the fuck out. And I was in full-blown panic. And I will never forget, my son was like, Mom, you can do this. Keep going. And of course, Jeff was like, babe, you went there to be quiet. You're not supposed to be texting me. And my meditation teacher said, are you safe? And I said, of course. And she goes, then turn your phone off. And so in that moment of grasping and clinging, even the people in my life showed up with that synergy of support that said, keep going. And so as I worked through it and I got to the microphone at the end, and they're like, does anybody want to share? And everybody wanted to talk about, I don't even, the stuff they wanted to talk about. And it got to me and I go, I don't really know that I have anything to say about the experience, because I'm just in the experience. But I do know that at one point I imagined taking that stick, and this was from the facilitator in the front of the room, that stick that you used to beat the gong that would let us, go to our meals and send us at home at night, because he'd beat a little gong. I wanted to and fantasized about taking that stick and beating you to death with it. But I'm past that point now. And I kind of had to bring that out, because I went into the darkness of everything in that cataclysm, and the radiant light that I was in and that we were all in by the end of that week. And I'll never forget what the facilitator said. And he said, the entire point of this week was to get you to be able to be comfortable with boredom. To be so comfortable with boredom that no matter what happens in life, you can be in it, not just the suffering. Because there was absolute boredom. Can you imagine sitting from 5 a.m. until 10 p.m. in a meditation position, getting up, to eat lunch and dinner and have tea, but never everybody look at another human being, talk to another human being. I mean, it's like prison. You're looking down at your feet, you're in the coffee or the tea, you're in the moment. And he said the whole point of mindfulness-based stress reduction, which is another type of practice, is to get you so accustomed to boredom that you can be with it. And so now, which is interesting, because last night, literally, I was sitting on my, shouldn't even say sitting, was in my pajamas laying on the couch. And Jeff's a little bit antsy, and he's like, I don't want to sit here and watch TV. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I'm okay with doing whatever we do, whether it's something exciting, whether it's something not exciting. But the reason is because in that week, I sat with all kinds of shit for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. So a couple of hours sitting on a couch on a night that there's nothing to do when you're restless, I got it. Because my mindfulness practice of allowing the energy to move, and not only do I have it because I've cultivated it and I've been through that experience in my retreat, I also have it because I know the energy is going to shift. And that kind of energy of the cataclysm last night and it eventually shifts, and tomorrow morning it'll be different. Tomorrow night, it just is what it is. And it's always going to be what it is in the moment that you're in. And so I share these stories with you to tell you anything you're trying to do to get out of the present moment, it's because you just haven't cultivated a skill set or a capacity to be with boredom, to be with suffering, to be with I don't know, to be with curiosity. When you cultivate that, all of your life changes. You don't have a need to do anything because you can be with everything. And so that's the whole power of really understanding. And I wanted you guys to understand the shifting of the energy because it's got a deeper, deeper meaning that if you really get into this, you really start to understand you're not in control of anything, but you're in control of everything. And so in the book, as I bring us to kind of a conclusion here, and gosh, I don't know, Jeff's going to be like, babe, why do you keep mentioning me in the show? Because that's my life. That's what happens. I got to give you guys real stories. Maybe one day I'll have him on the show and you can hear a little bit about, he's super wise, super handsome. And it turns out, as I speak about handsome before I wrap us up, so that really hot guy that was sitting next to me, turns out he was married. He's got 2 kids. But here's the coolest thing ever, and I love how life works. At the end of the week, at the beginning of the week, I said, hey man, why are you here? And he's like, oh, I'm just here to try to figure out who I am. And he's like, why are you here? And I'm like, well, I'm doing this 2-year certification. And, I'm here because, this is what I do for a living. And, my ego was just, end of the week, we get a chance to have dinner together our last night. And the guy starts talking. And the more he starts talking, I'm like, this sounds really interesting. And we only saw each other's first names on our name tag. So I go back to my room and I Google before we come back for dinner. And turns out this guy was like one of the top executives in the social media industry. I won't name organizations. I won't even say his name because I want to be honor his privacy. He literally is on a documentary about social media and was there to kind of prep and get himself ready and go into some deep self-discovery. He's a global game changer in really protecting our minds and being more mindful about getting us out of social media and back into the present moment. And so when I found all that out at the end of the week, I not only chuckled to myself and thought, gosh, I'm such a ding dong that here I am, thinking about this guy. He's here to like save the world from being polluted with social media. And we're all on our own journey. And so when the show came out and I reached out and was like, hey man, that was awesome. Your show's incredible. I had no idea. The whole point is you don't know where people are on their journey, where they are on their energetic shifts and the radiance and the light that they're bringing to the world, the work they're doing to get that light together, to bring it out into the world. You do your part, you let everybody else do their part, and it all works out. So I'm just wanting to share this all with you so you understand the why behind all of this. And if you really allow the energy to shift and you really learn how to be with it, and even being with boredom, being able to be with things that aren't exciting, what happens is you can cultivate the capacity to hold all of your inner experience. And that's where true freedom lies, because nobody takes anything away from you and you don't rely on anybody to give you anything to make your experience better. You're able to just be with it. So that's our 10 energetic shifts, which maybe you did know, maybe you didn't. But now that you know it, we're going to start to move into our next episode where I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into the actual definition of success. And the reason we kind of do it in this order as we go into the definition of success is now that you know how energy shifts and moves, when you start thinking about what success is and how you really want to create real success in your life, there's a flow to it. There's an energetic shift that you and everything has to go through in order to get to the radiance, aka the success. So we're going to talk about that on the next episode. You've got me coming back, and I promise we got some really killer stuff coming up in the next couple of chapters. Tons of guests. You've got so many guests coming up that you won't have just me for a while. But on the next episode, you've got me, and I can't wait to come back and talk to you a little bit more about the real definition of success and how to get there. I'll see you soon. Take care.
May you know goodness. May you know peace. May you know contentment. May you be